KSL, Taylor, and Francis, and many more. He has awarded for Best Research Paper in International Research Conference held in Mumbai. He has also conducted various trainings and faculty development programs. His research interest areas are mobile computing, consumer behavior, brand equity, cryptocurrency, service marketing, and many more. Now, I am inviting Dr. Raja Sankaran for giving his views on the topic predatory publishers and journals. Welcome, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much, ma'am. Good morning to everyone, and namaskar. Ma'am, can I share my screen?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm able to share.
Okay.
Okay, so the first question, we have a large number of participants on this call. Is everybody comfortable in English? या हिंदी भी use करना पड़ेगा मुझे?
In both languages, sir. In both languages.
So you'll prefer I should use Hindi as well?
Yes, sir.
अच्छा, हिंदी में भी बात करना है, ठीक है. अगर कुछ और बात बता दीजिएगा मुझे.
Because we have, sir, so many students of Hindi as well as SKT from SKT streams. Okay,
perfect. For my knowledge, what time should I end the session? It's 11:32 now.
It's 1 o'clock, sir.
1 o'clock, ठीक है. I'll try to wind up by then.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
Sure, sir.
So,
thank you.
Once again, good morning to everyone. And thank you so much for your introduction, ma'am. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
The session that I'm going to discuss about is related to predatory journals. The title that I have given is Money for Nothing, Predatory Journals. Issue क्या होता है, as a research scholar or as a researcher, हम लोग काफी papers publish करते हैं as part of career growth, PhD, multiple things that comes into the play. When we publish a paper, we should get a value add associated with it. अगर नहीं मिलता है, so it should not be that we pay for publishing a paper and then that money goes as a waste. So that's the way I've titled this particular workshop as. Now, getting into further details, काफी emails आते हैं हमारे पास. So I'll quickly walk you through with this. How many of you would have received an email like this? You can simply raise your hand or type it in the chat box. I'm just giving an example of the type of email that I received in the recent past, which states that call for papers followed by uska title, ISSN numbers, and then saying that I'm writing to you because of your paper titled and for promoting. So like this, an email comes in. This goes further, stating that submission deadline kab hai, publication type kya hai, and some name with the journal details. आप लोगों को कभी ऐसा mail मिला है? We just look into some of the chat messages. No, okay. Yeah, Bilal said yes, he has received it. Okay, I'm getting from some of you stating that yes, you have received these kind of emails. Okay, some of you have, some of you have not. So typically what they do is, if you look into this, they pick up the authors. जैसे जो authors ने publish किया है paper, उनका authors का नाम ले लेते हैं, paper का title, कुछ brief abstract भी कई लोग ले लेते हैं, और फिर they send mass mailing. So the key point is, when you get these kind of emails, you should not get carried away to publish your research paper in such type of journals. That's the first thing. If I move on further onto this, you look into the website, details of what the email has sent across. When you visit the website, it will give you lots of information about the aims and scope, जो कि बहुत सारा रहता है, जैसे business studies भी है, मैनेजमेंट है, लिटरेचर है, हिस्ट्री है, एंथ्रोपोलॉजी, मतलब एक ही पर्टिकुलर जर्नल में इनका स्कोप बहुत वाइड है। तो ये सब थोड़ा सोचने वाली बात है जो गड़बड़ है। एंड जो राइट साइड में आप पिक्चर देख रहे हैं, these are all the different indexing that the journal says that they are part of. For example, Crossref, Google Scholars and JGate and all this stuff. ये भी authenticity में issue रहता है, because the indexing must be from a very well-known governing body. So all these actually gives in a problem with the way of the modus operandi of what these predatory journals or publishers might follow. Having said that, I have requested the organizers to circulate this survey across to everyone, and I got only 14 responses. I will repeat it once again. I will put it on the chat box. If you can take a moment to submit or participate in this survey, it will be helpful. I'm collecting this based upon the survey related to the predatory journals. As I said, I received only 14 responses out of, I think we have 200 plus in this call. So this is the first signal of what you see. And they would also specify their processing charge, or what is popularly known as APC. जो मतलब article को process करने के लिए ये पैसे charge करते हैं. कुछ पब्लिशर्स इसको कैटेगराइज भी करते हैं एज द डेवलप्ड कंट्रीज और लोअर मिडिल इनकम और मिडिल इनकम और लो इनकम कंट्रीज, उसके हिसाब से उनका अलग चार्जेस रहता है. दे वुड आल्सो हैव डिफरेंट स्लैब ऑफ चार्जेस इफ यू आर इंडियन वर्सेस अब्रॉड. तो मतलब आई एम गिविंग यू मल्टीपल फ्लेवर्स ऑफ दिस. So this I picked up from the same journal. If you want the links, I can also provide you all these. If you simply go to this particular publisher website, it has got all the details related to what the journal is. Okay. All these are an open access. What open access means, I'll just explain in a moment. और फिर उसके बाद मतलब पूरी details आ जाती है इसमें, and they would also say all these information about online submission, उनका submit करने के लिए क्या क्या है for authors and reviewers. So for authors, what all should you do, what their editorial policy, ethics, and all this information. And उनके अपने journals के बारे में लोग बताते हैं. So the point is, you should be careful at the very initial phase about when they start sending you these kind of emails. So it should actually raise a particular caution about the kind of modus operandi that they use. This is a second example. Another journal which states, the previous example I talked about was only with the title. यहाँ पर ये लोग और भी डिटेल में जाते हैं. ये पूरा एब्स्ट्रैक्ट निकाल दिया, saying this is the abstract of your article and it has impressed us a lot. So they will use these kind of words. So don't get flattered with these words that they use. तो सिंपली आपका जो अच्छा पेपर पब्लिश हुआ है वहां से पिकअप कर लेते हैं टाइटल और द एब्स्ट्रैक्ट, और आपको एक ईमेल भेज देंगे कि ये आपका हमने पेपर पढ़ा है तो आप हमारे जर्नल में सबमिट करिए पेपर्स. So this is the first step what you should avoid for. Okay, if you have any questions, feel free to type it on the chat box. I think our moderator will queue your questions in. You don't have to wait for a specific time. जब भी आपको question पूछना है तो पूछ लीजिएगा. Okay, so this is my paper which is published in A category journal. For the mobile banking, it is a qualitative study. So simply उन्होंने title और बाकी सब लेकर एक mail भेज दिया कि we are very impressed, or they are using such kind of flattery words by which the authors will get attracted and submit their article. Moving on further. This is an notification or a public notice by the UGC. This notice was issued on 14th of June 2019, which clearly states that there is an increased incidence of compromised publication ethics and deteriorating academic integrity. And this is a growing problem which has contaminated various domains of research. So whether it is sociology, business, arts, linguistic, मतलब काफी जगह पर इसका problem है. And what they have also observed is the number of dubious or predatory journals worldwide is on increase. मतलब numbers बहुत ज़्यादा होने हैं. And what is being observed that India, the percentage of research articles in predatory journals which are published are quite high. I will show you some of this in the next slide as well. So the key thing is it's an alarming situation. मतलब हम लोगों को पता होना चाहिए कि वर्ल्ड वाइड क्या हो रहा है और हमारा जो पर्टिकुलर रिसर्च है वो कैसे कॉम्प्रोमाइज हो सकता है जिसका अनड्यू एडवांटेज लिया जाता है. एंड the kind of practice that is being followed by some of these predatory journalists, pay and publish thrash. मतलब आपको pay and publish तो पता ही है, आपने कुछ पे कर दिया, 1000 रुपए, 2000, 3000, 10,000 रुपए for publishing your paper. पेपर तो पब्लिश हो गया लेकिन उसका कोई फायदा नहीं है. इट इज समथिंग लाइक पुटिंग इट इन अ थ्रैश और ए रिसाइकल, मतलब कूड़ेदान में आपने डाल दिया जिसका कोई यूज और यूटिलिटी नहीं है, बिकॉज दैट जर्नल इज नॉट अ गुड जर्नल और इज नॉट अ रिकॉग्नाइज्ड जर्नल. This is a phenomena which is being followed worldwide, and there are a lot of researchers as well as research scholars. When I say researchers, will include everybody. For example, there could be faculties, assistant professors, professors, deans, vice chancellors. All of them are researchers because as part of academics, we are required to publish research papers on regular basis. So this is a phenomena which is being seen worldwide. If you look into the modus operandi or the way that these predatory journals work, it's a big business. It's a huge business. The fact of the matter remains that they are fake. Now, in the survey, I've also asked about if you have heard about the Beale's list. Some of you said yes, some of you said you have not heard. Not a problem. I'll introduce briefly about this as well. Why do we say it's a big business? ये particular Beale's list का जो लिया है उससे ये पता लगता है कि if we categorize as predatory publisher, standalone as well as hijacked journals. इसका मतलब क्या है? Predatory publisher वो होते हैं which is like a publishing house जिनके पास it will have one or more than one journals that they publish. So it's a publisher with multiple journals that they publish. So it's a publishing house, what we call as publishers. Standalone journals are मतलब individual इक्का दुक्का journals ये लोग publish करते हैं. They have got one or two journals that they would publish for. The third category is also very crucial, which is the hijacked journal. मतलब ये जैसे duplicate या fake होते हैं ना. For example, आज की डेट में 2000 रुपए का वैल्यू नहीं रहेगा. हमने demonetization के टाइम पे भी देखा 500 and 2000 notes were no longer in tender in 2016. So अगर इसी तरह का कोई fake journal आ जाता है which actually emulates a real journal, that is also a problem. So that is a hijacked journal. So these are the three categories typically what we talk about as predatory publisher, standalone as well as hijacked journal. If you look into the number of journals that were existing and the growth of it, publishers were around 18 in 2011, whereas in 2016 it has gone up to 923 number of publishers. मतलब it's a huge business. उसके बाद का data नहीं है क्योंकि ये सारा कुछ बेलीज लिस्ट से निकलता था और उसका भी कुछ और बाद में प्रॉब्लम हुआ है. तो हमारे पास सिर्फ 2016 तक का ये डेटा है. बाकी सब it is not into this kind of mode which gives a year-wise growth about these publishers and journals. Second is a standalone journal, जिसका if you look into 2013 सिर्फ 128 था, 2016 तक 882 हो गया. Similarly, hijacked journals भी काफी increase हो रहे हैं. Now these numbers are across domains and across multiple languages, across multiple countries. Now this list was forced to shut down. मतलब जो बेलीज हैं इनके बारे में अभी बताऊंगा आपको मैं. इन्होंने ये पर्टिकुलर लिस्ट निकाला था in order to stop this menace of the predatory journals. और उसके लिए फिर काफी कुछ इशू हुआ. इशू फ्रॉम द पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू ऑफ उनको थ्रेट मिला या कुछ पॉलिटिकल मोटिवेटेड कुछ ऐसे इंसिडेंट्स हुए जिसके कारण उन्होंने अपना ये काम स्टॉप कर दिया. सो he was forced to shut down after almost a decade of being involved in producing this kind of list. There are other studies as well. I've given a citation of the same from Shen in 2015. He said these predatory journals are increasing with the volumes going from 53,000 in 2010 to 420,000 articles in 2014 in around 8,000 active journals. So there are lots of issues that we see as a phenomena worldwide. The word of caution for all scholars and researchers is to be very, very careful before we publish any of our research manuscripts into these journals. So the first point is to understand what these are. Second point is to identify. And third point is to follow some of these best practices in order to avoid getting trapped into this kind of fake journals or predatory journals. I will cover these three key pointers as part of the session today. I hope everybody is able to understand. Agar koi question to nahi hai na? Or you want me to go slow, or you're fine with this? Yeah? Okay. Moving on further, अगर हम इसका distribution देखें from the various countries, what has been noticed is in India alone it is 27%, whereas there are still 26.8% which was impossible to determine the origin or the country from where these has been published. So the number of publishers are growing a lot. With the word of caution is India is very heavily involved into these kind of predatory publishing. So again, the word of caution is हमको avoid करना चाहिए अपना research इसमें publish करने के. So what are predatory journals? What is the formal definition of it? And this is a definition by Grudenwick in 2019, which states that predatory journals and publishers are entities that prioritize self-interest at the expense of scholarship and are characterized by false or misleading information, deviation from the best editorial and publication practices, a lack of transparency, and or the usage of aggressive and indiscriminate solicitation practices. There are multiple keywords into this. मैं थोड़ा बहुत explain कर देता हूँ और बाकी हम आगे देखेंगे slide. So when they say prioritize self-interest, that means it is more of like a business entity. उनको सिर्फ अपना पैसा बनाना है with these. There is nothing wrong into it, but it should be done in the correct manner, not at the cost of keeping the researchers and scholars at stake. Secondly, characterized by false or misleading information. मैं और आपको दिखाऊंगा कि होता क्या है. कुछ भी publish कर देते हैं. That means they do not go through the practices of using a peer-reviewed process. I'm sure कि किसी न किसी session में आपका ये conduct होता होगा. So I will not go into detail about this, about what the peer review process is. There are multiple approaches in which a double blind review typically indicates that the authors do not know who the reviewers are. Reviewers do not know who the authors are. So all this information is actually hidden from both. And then the review process happens by which it is ensuring that it is unbiased approach of giving the review. So ऐसे predatory journals में वो लोग इस तरह का review process use ही नहीं करते हैं. वो लिख देंगे अपने वेबसाइट में कि it's a peer reviewed, लेकिन होता ही नहीं. So they would deviate from these practices. There is a lack of transparency. The type of information which is shared, या तो रिव्यू का आता ही नहीं है कुछ information, या सिर्फ एक होल्ड करके फिर they will accept your manuscript after a short period of time. When I say short period, there are some which could happen in 1 week, 10 days, as well as a month's time in which it is accepted. So there are a lot of such issues which has been found, and they would use aggressive practices like sending emails. आपका ही कोई पुराना या पिछला पेपर जो आपने पब्लिश किया है उसको निकाल लेते हैं और उसका टाइटल और एब्स्ट्रैक्ट, क्योंकि इंफॉर्मेशन तो हर जगह अवेलेबल है, तो उसको लेकर आपको mass mailing kar denge to a lot of people saying that we have found your paper to be useful, and they will use flattery words by which you should be able to publish it. So there are a lot of such practices which are being adopted by them, which we as scholars should be aware of. So I've given all the citations as well as part of when I go through, so aapko koi dikkat nahi hoga in order to find these definitions. Now, predatory publishers have come into the business mainly because of their what we call it as an open access model. Iska matlab kya hai ki it's the free availability of content on the internet, permitting any users to read, download, copy, distribute, print, search, or link to the full text of these articles. Iska ye matlab hua ki जो open access model है उसमें there are different charging mechanism. I'll explain it in the next slide. Typically what happens is जो information, जो manuscript या research paper है, that can be easily downloaded by other authors free of cost. So इसमें जो reader है उसको पैसे नहीं देने हैं, लेकिन जो author है जिसने manuscript लिखा है या research paper लिखा है उसको पेमेंट करना पड़ता है. So typically that's an open access model which has been flouted or misused as part of the predatory publishing. Now, with the information and communication technology, with the advent of internet's penetration of computers, the large number of information can easily be available, and it is much easier to sit from one place and submit or make use of the technology in order to submit your manuscript in any part of the world. So it's quite easy in order to submit or to access the information, and most of them either as a free of cost in terms of the type of technology that would exist. So what are the causes of growth of predatory journals? Now, if we categorize as those who are experienced and those who are young researchers, for example, I'm sure there will be some of you, those who have just started your career as a researcher, you would have enrolled for a PhD. जो भी 14 लोगों ने सर्वे फॉर्म भरा था, मैंने उनमें देखे कुछ लोगों का I think 4 months or less than 1 year is your experience as a researcher. So when you are pretty young, you may not be aware of what these predatory journals are. So you can be easily trapped, or you could fall in prey with these deceptive publishers. जैसे मैंने initially आपको दिखाया एक email, अगर इस तरह के emails आपको आते हैं, तो it's much easier to fall in trap of all this. So the first point, mistrust the quality of their work. That means as a research scholar, you are not sure about the type of quality work that you have done. You still have that doubt. So, so the thing is, you must produce good research papers, good quality work as part of your research or the PhD or the thesis, and you should base it on good quality papers. They are unaware about the fraudulent nature of the journals. It's typically the modus operandi, या जो उनका business tactics होता है जिसके हिसाब से वो लोग करते हैं, and they are unable to distinguish a legitimate from predatory one. So you are not able to understand what is good and what are the bad journals. I will go through some of these concepts as well on giving you the tips on how do you find good journals and not good journals. A weak research background may lack ability to assess accurately. So what does it mean? That means if your research by itself is based on some predatory article, in that case, the quality may not have been produced by you. Hence, you will not be able to assess accurately about it. So you should know how you should base, for example, some seminal papers. If you're into management domain, we have the different journal categorization as ABDC category journals or ABS category journals, which you should base for. Seminal papers are also very good, from where you should start looking into your articles and how should you go further from there. So these are very crucial in order to understand how do you identify the good journals. To launch an online journal is cheap. मतलब ये तो वही बात हो गई कि मुझे अपना एक ब्लॉग लिखना है, या मैं कह देता हूँ कि जी मेरा ये जर्नल है और आप लोग उसमें सबमिट करिए. आजकल क्या चाहिए, एक ISSN नंबर जो कि इजीली हम ले सकते हैं, और आप अपना सबमिट करिए पेपर्स इसमें. सो आई कैन आल्सो डू अ कॉल फॉर पेपर्स. सो आज की डेट में in order to initiate this is much easier. That means you don't need to have a big publishing house in order to get into the mode of spending money and looking into the quality perspective. Some of them are also looking into making quick money out of this type of business. I'll just complete this slide, and then I think Purva has raised hand. Okay, I've got two more points. Then researchers are forced to publish to get funding. Again, when you are a researcher, what you need to do is look in for additional funds for your work or your project. In that scenario, you need to show some prior work. In order to have a quick turnaround, you might fall into this prey of getting into the predatory journal. Hence, the growth has happened. Institutions and publishers have not been able to warn the researcher. This is another big cause. मतलब अगर हम देखें, हमारे पास कोई एक पर्टिकुलर लिस्ट नहीं है जिसमें हम बता सकें कि ये प्रेडेटरी है और ये प्रेडेटरी नहीं है. There are multiple areas, multiple domains, multiple things to look up at in order to understand which are predatory, which are not predatory. There are still various initiatives which are being taken. For example, UGC का care है, जिसमें कि we get a lot of information related to which are predatory and which are other journals which are accepted under the UGC care. Lekin, having said that, as researchers, we need to provide inputs to UGC care for them to raise an issue, for them to investigate and identify whether a journal is actually acceptable or not. So there are certain norms which these governing bodies would also follow, which I will walk you through in a while. Somebody had raised the hand. You can ask a question, please. If the moderator can unmute and you can ask your question, please. Somebody had a question? Yeah, please go ahead, ask your question.
Purva, ask your question, please. Purva.
Okay, ma'am, nahi hai to koi baat nahi. Let her raise again. I'll continue. Yeah, thank you, ma'am. Okay, next. I'll move on to the next slide. So if you look into who pays, for example, if you have to publish your paper or your research work or a manuscript, who actually pays for it, and what are the typical costs for maintaining these kind of research papers or the manuscript by the publishers. So there are multiple options. One is something known as a publisher pay model, jisme ki they would get into advertising or get into society membership, by which these publishers will get paid. So that's one of the models. Second model is reader pay, जिसमें कि subscription लिया जाता है per article fee. What does this mean? For example, अगर आप देखें कि I'll give you a quick view. For example, आप जाएं कि in sciencedirect.com, you will find there are some which are free, some are to be paid. I'll just say search for mobile payments. अब यहाँ पर क्या है, कुछ है जो ओपन एक्सेस है, जिसका एक्सेस सबके पास है, तो ये मैं इजीली डाउनलोड कर सकता हूँ। बाकी अगर आप देखें तो ये सब डाउनलोडेबल नहीं है। तो इन दिस पर्टिकुलर सिनेरियो व्हाट वी नीड टू डू इज we need to look for a subscription for this. कौन लेता है सब्सक्रिप्शन? टिपिकली यूनिवर्सिटीज विल सब्सक्राइब फॉर दिस। और नेक्स्ट स्टेप पर आर्टिकल, दैट मीन्स अगर मुझे ये पर्टिकुलर पेपर चाहिए मेरे रिसर्च के लिए, तो मैं क्या करूंगा? इफ आई सेलेक्ट दिस, it will tell me it is in a decision science support system. It is an A-star category journal, okay, which was published in 2023. So कहते हैं या तो फिर आप इंस्टीट्यूशन के थ्रू एक्सेस करिए, नहीं तो परचेज करिए। So if I click on purchase, each of this will be priced anything between for example academic and personal. So $27.95 $28 का है। So typically हम लोग इतने ज्यादा पैसे नहीं खर्च करते हैं in order to buy a particular research article because we have our own limitations coming from India, and convert it into say 85 rupees to $1। अब देखिए कितना हो जाता है। अगर मुझे अपने रिसर्च के लिए कम से कम 50 भी चाहिए तो बहुत ज्यादा हो जाएगा in order to buy for this. So that is second option as per article fee. The third is in which author pay as a submission fee or a publication fee. Submission is, that means if you want to submit to that particular journal, they will charge for that. And the third is publication. Then अगर आपका पेपर accept हो जाता है उस journal में for publication, and then only you need to pay for it. So there are multiple such kind of models that exist worldwide with multiple journals. Now the cost क्या होता है? Editorial decision making. That means हर एक जर्नल में एक एडिटर होता है. There will be other sub editors. Special issues में अलग guest editors होते हैं. तो उनका एक particular team रहता है जो इन सब के लिए decide करते हैं. So starting from editors, sub editors, and other individuals, those who would actually be taking decisions about your manuscript. Then peer review process, wherein they will invite reviewers, yeah, authors, those who will be reviewing the articles and evaluating the quality assessment for the articles. Copy editing, production, ये सब उनका जो जर्नल का रिक्वायरमेंट होता है उसके हिसाब से फॉर्मेटिंग किया जाएगा। तो ये फाइनल स्टेज में ये सब आता है ताकि आपका पेपर एक्सेप्ट होने के बाद उसको पब्लिश कर सके। Archiving is very crucial from the point of view of that. अगर किसी को भी परचेज करना है या एक्सेस करना है आर्टिकल्स, it should be made available on the digital mode. So archiving could be for the past, मतलब जब से शुरू हुआ है. For example, there are journals which started 50 years ago, 60, 70 years ago. उन सब के भी होने चाहिए आपको in order to access those articles. तो वो सारा archiving में आ जाएगा. फिर वेबसाइट, जो आप वेब पेज देखते हैं उसका मेंटेनेंस वगैरह के लिए इस तरह के काफी सारे कॉस्ट्स होते हैं which the publisher would like to look into for all of this. Now looking from an individual researcher, what happens if we base our research on some poor quality or fabricated findings? So that means अगर मैं अपना रिसर्च कर रहा हूँ, टिपिकली रिसर्च आर्टिकल्स में हम लोग क्या करते हैं? इंट्रोडक्शन, हम लोग देखते हैं कि हाउ डू आई फाइंड अ रिसर्च गैप, पिछले लिटरेचर्स को हम रिव्यू करते हैं, एंड देन कम विद सम नॉवल अप्रोच, अपना रिसर्च क्वेश्चंस वगैरह बनाया. देन वी कम इनटू अ लिटरेचर रिव्यू सेक्शन in which we'll review the prior studies in order to understand what type of research has been done in which part of the countries and how can I base my research over it. फिर हम अपना जैसे कुछ कॉन्सेप्चुअल मॉडल बनाया, आइडेंटिफाइड वेरिएबल्स, डिपेंडेंट इंडिपेंडेंट वेरिएबल्स, देन वी डू द डेटा कलेक्शन एनालिसिस. टिपिकली दैट्स द प्रोसेस दैट वी फॉलो. सो इन एनी ऑफ दीज स्टेजेस, इफ फॉर एग्जांपल एनी ऑफ द रिसर्चर हैव यूज्ड a non-quality or a poor quality research paper, तो उनका जो काम भी होगा वो भी poor रहेगा. So that creates an issue or a problem. And if you are citing these, in that case, you are also distributing untrusty or unworthy or untrustworthy sciences. ये हमने काफी देखा है in the recent past, specifically during pandemic period. चाहे आप unworthy बोले उनको या फिर जिसको आप trust नहीं कर सकते हैं, वैसे अभी आपने किसी का रिसर्च पेपर्स को उठा के अपने काम में यूज किया या उसको कोट किया, साइट किया और उसके बाद आप यूज कर रहे हैं, तो दैट इज आल्सो अ प्रॉब्लमेटिक. हम टिपिकली इस तरह से बात करते हैं व्हाट इज अबाउट गिगो. तो गिगो स्टैंड्स फॉर गार्बेज इन गार्बेज आउट. It's a common terminology that we use in mathematics as well as in information technology. मतलब computers में हम काफी use करते हैं. If we consider this to be a black box, typically each computer is what it requires is some input and some output, what it provides for. So if your input by itself is garbage, you cannot expect an excellent output coming out of it. So that means अगर आपने garbage दिया as an input, आपको output भी garbage मिलेगा. So if I want to draw an analogy from this, typically what happens is if you are basing your research or your study based upon a non-quality work or a predatory work, in that case, what you will also be producing will be a garbage as an output. So you have to be careful that the type of research papers that you choose should be of good quality, and you should base your study as well based upon those good quality research papers. Okay. Moving on further, COVID में हमने बहुत कुछ देखा है ये, the kind of pandemic that each one of us have gone through. So I won't dwell into too much of details, but typically what we have seen is for almost 1.5 to 2 years, everything went into a standstill. We were not going out, no colleges, nothing physically doing it. Everything was done online. There were a lot of researchers worldwide who were working on to identify the treatment associated with, or to ensure that the spread can also be controlled. There were multiple options taken both by the government, the individuals, the public, and the scientists, in order to understand why the spread happens and to come up with some medication or the vaccines. During that period of time, it has also been noticed that there were a lot of reuse of old data. मतलब पुराना कुछ भी उठा के they started publishing it, copying, using salami slicing, writing multiple research papers from the same data sets. So the number of influx of papers that we have seen with wrong data has gone, but with nothing coming out as an solution for the disease or to cater to resolve the disease. We have all gone through this, the amount of time it has taken, and what it is not only for that, but we have seen a lot of these kind of issues being come up with number of papers which are published during this COVID time. Another thing what is being also spoken about beyond COVID-19, it's not just pandemic, but what we are seeing is paperdemic. जिस तरह का इशू हुआ है पैंडेमिक में, वाइड स्प्रेड, everybody got infected, and we were restricted of confined to our home and our mobility as well. Similar is what is happening in the scientific world. That means in a research world, we are having so much of papers which are being published, but they are not of any use. So it is more of a paperdemic scenario of what we are going through, with whether we call it lack of integrity, the lack of risk, lack of quality, anything that comes up with not ensuring that rigor is not being followed is what we are looking into this age of paperdemic now. Now coming into further about what these predatory journals are and why do we have these kind of issues. The famous name which comes into our mind is about Jeffrey Beall. He was a librarian in one of the universities in the US, University of Colorado, and he was a scholarly communications librarian. He was the one who actually initiated a lot of these things in order to put together about what these predatory journals are, how to identify them, and keep this list quite updated. So he identified that these are a global threat. That means these are the ones that how they would, or these publishers would prey on individuals, and the type of articles which goes in for publication, they would accept along with the author's fee. जैसे मैंने अभी दिखाया आपको open access जो business model है, ये लोग वही यूज करते हैं. They could charge any amount, for example 500 रुपए, 1000 रुपए, 2000, 5000. आपको ये फी बोला कि ये सबमिट करना है और आपका पेपर पब्लिश हो जाता है without performing promised quality check for the issues. मतलब plagiarism check नहीं किया, approval process नहीं है, they will not follow a rigor of peer review, and they are not indexed appropriately. So naive researchers are not only, readers are not the only victim, because many researchers have been duped into submitting to predatory journals. So issue क्या होता है, एक बार आपने सबमिट कर दिया अपना मैन्युस्क्रिप्ट या पेपर और इन्होंने पब्लिश कर दिया, तो आप इसको कुछ नहीं कर सकते हैं बाद में, until and unless you are in a position by which you could revoke that. जैसे ही आपका डिजिटल फुटप्रिंट आ जाता है, आपका काम वहां खत्म हो गया. You cannot afford to put it somewhere else. That means अगर आपको बाद में पता चला कि ये predatory journal है, लेकिन आपने अपना पेपर पब्लिश कर दिया है, you cannot do anything with it. So you have to be very, very careful unless and until you write to them and say you want to withdraw. And if they agree for it, only then you will be able to submit in another place. Otherwise, once you submit, that particular research is gone. In a kind of predatory journal. A separate analysis suggests that predatory publishers would collect millions of dollars as a publication fee. So that becomes their modus operandi in which they make money. And the work could disappear. मतलब क्या होता है कि उन्होंने कुछ जर्नल शुरू किया, 1 साल, 2 साल, 5 साल, 10 साल के बाद पता ही नहीं आपका क्या होता है. Whereas we as researchers, हमारा करियर पूरा उस पर डिपेंड करता है. Whether I have published a paper 1 year ago or 5 years ago, हम अपने करियर के हिसाब से देखते हैं. The paper should be available for others to read or to cite them. It cannot disappear. It is difficult for others to find your work. Even if it is found, they may be reluctant. मतलब अगर आपका अच्छा जर्नल में नहीं गया, predatory journal में गया है, तो कोई भी उसको cite नहीं करेगा. So that becomes another issue. Then there are documented cases in which publishing in predatory journals, though inadvertently, resulted in ethics acquisitions as well as career injury. मतलब एथिकल इशू बन जाएगा ये कि अगर आपको पता है या बिना पता हुआ भी आपने किसी प्रेडेटरी जर्नल में सबमिट कर दिया, या कुछ यू आर इन्वॉल्व इन सम प्लेगरिज्म्स, या आपका करियर ग्रोथ नहीं होता है कि nowadays we have got lot of these stipulations for NIRF ranking, Web of Science, Scopus में लिस्टिंग होना चाहिए. अगर कुछ प्रेडेटरी बन जाता है, मिल जाता है उनको, तो स्कोपस लिस्टिंग में से निकल जाएगा और आप सोचते रह जाएंगे मैंने तो सबमिट करने से पहले चेक किया था और फिर बाद में नहीं मिला. ऑल दीज काइंड ऑफ issues might crop up. So please be very, very careful before you submit any of your manuscript into these journals. You have to be extra careful about it. So once your work is published in this predatory journal, it is very, very difficult in order to remove it or to submit it elsewhere. मतलब you are at the mercy of the publisher. जब तक वो आपको एक confirmation नहीं देते हैं, आप कुछ नहीं कर पाएंगे उसको. You can't simply publish it. So दो ये list निकाला था इन्होंने, लेकिन काफी इनको he went through these difficulties in order to start maintaining it. So after a decade, it was stopped. There is this particular list available. So what I'll do is I'll walk you through with some of these ways how to find the list, how to find. There is not just one source. कोई एक जगह नहीं है जहां पर आपको मिल जाता है. तो मैं काफी सारे flavors आपको दिखाऊंगा because you all are from multidisciplinary domains in this. I think there are some of you who are from arts, some are from management, some from social sciences and other domains. So I will show you multiple places from where you can identify about going through with these lists. The first is open access publishers. तो एक ये लिस्ट इन्होंने निकाले हैं काफी सारे टू लुक फॉर दीज प्रेडेटरी जर्नल्स. So in case of open access, these are the different ones. I hope you can see my the Explorer or web page.
Yes, sir.
You can
Yes.
see it. Okay, perfect. So this is one which talks about the list related to which are a potential predatory scholarly open access publishers. ये publishers के नाम है, वो आप इसमें सर्च कर सकते हैं. फॉर एग्जाम्पल आपको किसी का भी सर्च करना है, से अमेरिकन जर्नल कुछ था, यू कैन जस्ट डू Ctrl+F, अमेरिकन जर्नल. आपको ऐसे कुछ आप सर्च कर सकते हैं in order to find which are these probable publishers who are predatory. So that's one place. लिंक्स वगैरह आपको सारा मिल जाएगा, डोंट वरी अबाउट इट. देयर आर मल्टीपल वेज टू डू इट. नंबर 1 आपको मिल जाएगा मेरे वेबसाइट से. इफ यू जस्ट गो इन हियर अंडर द जर्नल एब्स्ट्रैक्टिंग एंड इंडेक्सिंग, मैंने एक लिंक बनाया हुआ है प्रेडेटरी जर्नल्स का. आप इसको सेलेक्ट करेंगे तो आपको ये सारी इंफॉर्मेशन मिल जाएगी, लाइक अ चेकलिस्ट, डिफरेंट क्राइटेरियाज. और मैं ये पूरा अपडेट कर दूंगा अगले एक आध दिनों में. इन ऑर्डर टू have based upon what I'm showing you now, I will update this in my web page, so you should be able to easily find. अगर आपको पता नहीं है कैसे है, कैसे जाना है इसके लिए, तो I've just messaged in this, बहुत सारे सिर्फ हेलो मैसेजेस हैं. ओके, तो मैं क्या करता हूँ, आपको एक everyone, I will just message you here. तो आपको क्या करना है कि यू कैन सिंपली गो इनटू, you can go to this particular page. I'll keep providing you the link. Okay, यहाँ पे जाएंगे तो predatory journals, और यहाँ पर आपको सारी वो इंफॉर्मेशन मिल जाएगी related to predatory journals जो भी मैं आज कवर कर रहा हूँ. I will have majority of them listed in this. एक पेज या मल्टीपल पेजेस इसमें से ब्रांच आउट हो जाएगा. सो आई विल क्रिएट इट अकॉर्डिंगली. ओके, अगर आपको पता नहीं है, जैसे भूल गए, लिंक नहीं है आपके पास, कैसे जाना है, तो आप क्या कर सकते हैं, यू कैन सिंपली गो टू द गूगल. सर्च तो करना आता है ये सबको. यू जस्ट टाइप माई नेम एस राजा शंकरन, RAJASANKARAN. जब आप टाइप करेंगे तो ये जो पहला साइट है, पहला पे है जो कि sites.google.com, ये वाला है. नेक्स्ट इज माय लिंक्डइन प्रोफाइल. यू आर मोर देन हैप्पी टू बी पार्ट ऑफ योर इन कांटेक्ट विथ यू वाया लिंक्डइन. आप you can check that as well. So when you come into my website, I've got lots of information related to multiple perspectives on the research. तो यहाँ पर under the resources you can come into journal abstracting. यही वाला आपको दिखाया था मैंने, journal abstracting, और यहाँ पर लिंक है about predatory journal. So you can use either of the approaches in order to find all this information. I've got lots of things which I will start uploading or keeping this particular one updated where you can access this information. Okay, so that's about the place where you can access it. So first is about open access. Next is about some criteria for determining predatory publishers. So I'll show you this as well. So if I go in here, they've got different criteria. That means how should I as a scholar identify whether it is a predatory publisher or not. एक तो जैसे आपको वो दिखाया था मैंने, और दूसरा है इन्होंने एक क्राइटेरिया बनाया है, तो जो आप एक्सेस कर सकते हैं. विद दिस क्राइटेरिया यू शुड बी एबल टू फाइंड how should you go about this. जैसे ये particular one है, it is by him only, Jeffrey Beal in 2015. So he has given multiple criteria for editorial and staff. Okay, whether the owner is identified as an editor of each and every journal published by the organization. As I said, there is not one specific place where you will have everything. लेकिन बहुत सारे ऐसे हैं जिसको आप कोलेक्ट कर सकते हैं इंफॉर्मेशन. This is quite exhaustive जो इन्होंने दिया है. Similarly, business management में ये लोग क्या करते हैं? About the integrity क्या रहता है? So name of the journal is incongruent with the journal's mission. And मतलब lot of things that they have given. If they are poor journal standards or practice, what does it mean? So publisher copies author's journals verbatim or with minor editing from other publisher. इसका ये मतलब हुआ जैसे टिपिकली आप किसी भी अच्छे जर्नल्स में आप सबमिट करते हैं लाइक एल्जेवियर, एमरल्ड, टेलर एंड फ्रांसिस, सेज पब्लिकेशंस, तो उन सब का ऑथर गाइडलाइंस रहेगा. तो उस ऑथर गाइडलाइंस में जो भी देते हैं एज इट इज इन्होंने सिंपली कॉपी कर दिया, थोड़ी जगह पर अपडेट करके इन्होंने अपने वेबसाइट में डाल दिया. तो ये इन सब से पता लग जाता है कि दीस आर सम इंडिकेशंस to identify whether it is a good publisher, a good journal or not. So it's quite exhaustive. I'm not going through each one of them. You can always review this at your leisure time. So as I said, I'll give you all this information that you can easily access. So ये इनका criteria है सिर्फ. फिर है journal evaluation tool. मैं थोड़ी देर में दिखाऊंगा ये पूरा evaluation tool, but this is something which has been collated by Loyola Marymount University in the US, which talks about multiple perspectives on what you can use in order to evaluate a particular journal. You can also download this file. मैं थोड़ी देर में आपको दिखाता हूँ इसको कैसे use करना है. Okay, so this is in the Bailey's list, and then they've got a listing of hijacked journal. That means those journals which are into the hijacked category. उसके बारे में भी पूरा इसमें listing दिया हुआ है, saying that which is a hijacked or a predatory journal and which is an authentic one. So what they do is, मतलब similar name or same name रख लेते हैं. जैसे इन्होंने links भी दिया हुआ है. For example, this particular one is an authentic journal. मैं सिर्फ एक sample के लिए आपको दिखा देता हूँ. So this is an authentic journal, okay, which gives in all this information. And the next, what they have given is this one. If you see, the name is exactly the same. Okay, so this is a predatory. If you compare and contrast between the two journals, you will, by look and this, you will come to know, see this versus this. So या तो फिर ये खत्म हो गया, जैसे ही पता लग गया इनका खत्म हो गया. तो इस तरह के बड़े सारे हैं. You'll find some similar names which goes in here. Okay, या ये वाला नाम है या फिर ये वाला नाम है. तो आप लोग इसको you can access it. The list is huge, so you should ideally review them in order to understand whether they are into this particular list or not. It's quite good and quite comprehensive. You can simply do a search in order to find whether it is a predatory journal or not. Okay, so this is the another approach for the hijacked journals. Okay, any questions till now before I get into? I'll take a quick question if there are any. I guess no questions. Okay, so in this predatory journal, what are the different modus operandi or the habits of these publishers, or how do they operate? First, they would send emails soliciting manuscript submission. That means they will send mass mailers saying that I have read your paper, another paper saying that you submit your paper, we are very impressed, like जो मैंने opening में दिखाया था. So they would send multiple emails like this to various authors worldwide because it is focused towards more into academic field. Or academic field में, if you are a research scholar has to produce 2 research papers as part of the PhD journey in order to qualify, though this has been removed by UGC of late. Otherwise, this was one of the mandate. Second, if you are an academician, in order to जैसे appraisals होता है, उसमें there are various universities in India which has got the norms that you should publish 2 research papers every year. Now, when these kind of things happens, which are pressurized for individuals, they would look for some quick bucks or easy ways in order to publish the papers. And that's where such kind of publishers will exploit individuals. Some could also send invitations to join their editorial board. They have extremely high acceptance rate. What does it mean? That means when you submit a research paper or a manuscript to the journal, they'll simply accept it. The rejection rate is very, very less. Whereas if you look into high quality journals, their acceptance rate is typically in single digit or in early 2 digits. That means if there are 100 papers, hardly 8 to 9 is what they will accept, which goes into multiple levels of revisions as well. Whereas in case of such kind of predatory journals, acceptance rate is high. It will be much more than 90%. Publication is fast. एक हफ्ता, एक महीना, 2 हफ्ते में आपका पेपर पब्लिश हो जाएगा. कंसील्ड पब्लिशिंग लोकेशन, आपको पता भी नहीं चलेगा कि उनका एड्रेस क्या है, या कुछ यूएस का या कुछ बाहर का कुछ भी दे देंगे, कुछ भी नाम दे देंगे, पता भी नहीं चलेगा. They could have titles which are broad, confusing, or misleading. The way that they will have, matlab, editors, sub-editors, the way the organization structure would be, will not be. The same journal will cater to multiple domains, and they would require copyright transfer before accepting your manuscript. So there are such kind of modus operandi that they will use. Coming into further, how can we identify that these journals are actually good or predatory journals? So I'm picking up from one of the research papers. I'll tell you which one also, wherein they have used an undercover operation or typically a sting operation in order to find what is the acceptance rate and kitna jaldi unka paper accept ho jayega. These numbers are very, very alarming. So this was the researcher by the name of Bohannon. So Bohannon in 2013, he published this paper as well. I'll give you all links. Don't worry about that. You will have all this information. So he published this, Who's Afraid of Peer Review, in a journal known as Science, and this is the DOI number, in 2013. So what he did was, he created a manuscript which was flawed, which was bogus. Matlab, sab kuch galat tha us paper mein. It was a bogus cancer paper, and he sent it to 255 open access journals. And there are a lot of things that he identified. मैं बहुत briefly जा रहा हूँ इसमें. मतलब he was looking into what is the location of the journal's publisher. मतलब हर एक का location होना चाहिए ना, जो उनका physical address है वो क्या है, editors कौन है, उनका bank account क्या है. मतलब if they will say their address is in US, but they will accept money in Indian rupees, or vice versa. So जो money transaction होता है वो कैसे होता है? It could be continent apart. And then website does not mention any fee, whereas they will charge at a later point in time. Convincing a friend in the US to pay the fee on her behalf. Okay, so there are multiple modus operandi which was used in order to understand this. The target was all the journals which are in the Beale's list. He came out with that out of 255, 157 journals simply accepted. Only 98 were rejected. And remember, this paper was all completely flawed. 82% of these publishers were on Bailey's list, which accepted the paper. So number of papers, he has given a graphical representation of the same. This map is very, very difficult to digest. If you look in this, across the world, what was sent, this is the India map. आप देखेंगे इंडिया में सबसे ज्यादा heavy density, heavy concentration है. मतलब it is an alarming situation for all of us. So India emerged as the world's largest base for open access fee charging 64, and 90% of the papers were accepted. So the word of caution for all of us in this call is, we should be aware about what is happening across the world. And we as individuals, as researchers, as scholars, we should not fall in this particular trap. So whatever is dubious, let us avoid them. Okay, I'm a bit conscious of time, so I will try to hurry up some of this, wherein I should focus more on some checklist and to show you about the best practices to be used. This is another paper which talks about the challenges as well as responses. Okay. There are many more into this. If you look in worldwide, what all has been published, some articles, some research papers. So the thing is, it is a scary scenario. Okay. एक हिंदू में भी आर्टिकल आया था, और मतलब scenario is scary across the world. We should not fall under the trap. So if you look into how they work, if it is a credible journal, आप जो देख रहे हैं यहाँ पे left side में, they will go through a peer review process with multiple revisions. Even आपका rejections भी होता है, right from desk reject to multiple levels of rejection. हो सकता है first review के बाद reject हो गया है, second के बाद, third के बाद, और time भी काफी लगता है. So it is like a race. मतलब there will be multiple roadblocks, and we as scholars have to go through each of these roadblocks or the milestones in order to get our paper published. ये होता है credible journals में. अगर आप राइट हैंड साइड का पिक्चर देखेंगे जो प्रेडेटरी जर्नल्स है, they will have this kind of scenario wherein you can easily walk in through. They will greet you to come and submit your papers, and they will say flattery words about your research, and they will accept your article. So we should not fall under prey of these predatory journals. So that's a key thing. And moving on further, what do we mean by what is a good journal? They are trusted and respected by the community. For example, if you are in management, you know which journals are good, say in marketing, in generic business research, in consumer behavior, in finance, in decision sciences, in analytics. Similarly, if you are in linguistic, जो हिंदी में कौन से अच्छे जर्नल्स हैं, संस्कृत के कौन से अच्छे जर्नल्स हैं, तो इस तरह के काफी areas हैं जो which are well known in that particular field that you should be looking for. They are well organized, मतलब उनका पूरा editorial board रहता है, उनके review standards होते हैं, in which they will have a process of peer review, acceptance, rejections. They will also publish what is the acceptance rate, how much time it takes for a journal to accept, or an average time to accept a particular manuscript. So there are a lot of such kind of metrics which are being published. They would emphasize on the quality as well as trustworthiness of the content. मतलब simply आपने submit कर दिया एक manuscript, publish नहीं होगा. It will go through rigorous process. सबसे पहले आपका quality देखेंगे at every stage with whether you have followed that rigor or not. I can tell you from my own instances, जो मेरे papers publish हुए हैं, in A category journal, it has gone through 6 different review process. और from the time I submitted till the time it was accepted, 1 साल भी लगा है मुझे. So we need to have a lot of patience. We need to go through with that kind of process in order to comply with. हर एक रिव्यू में टाइम देते हैं, लेकिन it is quite time consuming and quite iterative process. There should be transparency of the process to the authors as well as the readers. Evidence of utility. एविडेंस कैसे मिलता है? साइटेशन से. नाउ रिमेंबर, साइटेशन बहुत गलत भी बता देते हैं कुछ जर्नल्स में. दे विल इन्फ्लेट द नंबर, दे विल से इट्स हाईली साइटेड, साइटेशन इज 7 पॉइंट, 6 पॉइंट, मतलब नंबर सारे गलत होंगे. हमको उसमें नहीं, वी शुड नॉट फॉल अंडर दैट प्रे. And there are governing bodies which actually publishes these citations. We should know how and where to find them. A trusted and respected publisher who adheres to publication ethics. This is some well-known ones. We should always use them for publishing our paper. They are usually vetted by category journals. For example, अगर आप management से हैं, तो आपको पता रहता है कि ABDC journals, which is Australian Business Deans Council, they have come together in order to evaluate the quality of journals, and then they are publishing it once in every 6 years. They come up with an interim list after 3 years, but पूरा review process होता है 6 साल में एक बार जो ये लोग publish करते हैं. They are categorized as A star, A category, B and C category journals. Similarly, एक UK का governing है जो ABS है, which also publishes this. We could also have Scopus as well as UGC care. जैसे इंडिया में हम लोग काफी for qualifying to submit our thesis, we also use UGC care list. but there is a word of caution with respect to the limitation it has, because these are not something which is vetted, but they will also look into some changes over a period of time. There should be some complaint raised by individuals by which they can take an action. So if you simply think it is a UGC listed, everything will be fine, may or may not. So you need to do the vetting from your perspective in order to make sure that they are of quality criteria. So I will go through with some of these as well in a moment. So what are these characteristics of predatory journals? They will exploit something what is known as a gold open access model. जो मैंने अभी दिखाया था आपको, what is the meaning of open access? They will charge money from the authors when they submit the manuscript or at the time of acceptance of the research paper. They pretend to be legitimate. मतलब काफी कुछ रहता है, जैसे वेबसाइट बना दिया अपना, नाम किसी के साथ सिमिलर रख दिया, इंटरनेशनल नाम उसके साथ आ गया या जर्नल आ गया, तो इन सब से ना काफी कुछ गड़बड़ हो जाता है एज ए स्कॉलर इन ऑर्डर टू सबमिट इन दिस. क्वालिटी इज सब्सटैंशियल कंसर्न which may be a fake peer review or very poor peer review. So जो उनके authors होते हैं जो review करते हैं वो सब very, very poor quality. Failure to adhere to the acceptable standards of scholarly publishing. So again, this is another side that you should be looking in for, what is known as think, check, submit. Excellent site which gives lots of valuable information. इसमें है about what is predatory publishing, then what are the things that you should be watching out for. मैंने थोड़े से डाले थे इसमें स्लाइड में, but there are many more exhaustive information that goes as part of it. As I said, I will share all this information with you. I'll put it in my website. You should be able to access them. So please make sure that you go through all of them before you submit your research paper. Predatory journals are called write-only publishing. इसका क्या मतलब हुआ? आपने एक बार सबमिट कर दिया, खत्म हो गया वो. आप उसको ना तो कोई पढ़ता होगा स्कॉलर्स, ना कोई उसमें साइट करेंगे, ना आपको उसका मतलब पीडीएफ फाइल भी नहीं मिलेगा 2 साल 4 साल 5 साल 10 साल के बाद. जो काम हो गया खत्म हो जाएगा. सो इट्स मोर ऑफ ए राइट ओनली और डिसेप्टिव पब्लिशिंग. इट कुड बी ए फेक जर्नल एज वेल. It would exploit the business model by charging fee from the authors. Multiple things. I won't repeat what we have gone through. So mainly scholars could be tricked by sending emails, flattering them. ये बहुत गड़बड़ होता है ये. तो एक और स्टडी हुआ था जिसमें उन्होंने देखा कि when you publish in these predatory journals, there are no citations over a 5-year period following the publication, which is quite scary. हमें चाहिए कि हम जब भी पब्लिश करते हैं कुछ भी, बाकियों को भी साइट करना चाहिए. The others should also get benefit, because in every research we go through what is the contribution to the academic knowledge or to the existing body of knowledge, and second, what is the managerial implication or how will it benefit the managers or for taking policy decisions. So these are the 2 key criteria that we go through, apart from other things like what were the limitations, how did we do our study and all. So our study should be something which should be useful by others. They should also cite our papers over a period of time in which, based upon our contribution, others can expand or extend further our studies. Individuals, if you look into, it is ever increasing in order to submit. Okay, for example, scholars है to meet with the guidelines of your PhD. अगर academicians हैं 2 पेपर पब्लिश करना है हर साल में, तो कैसे करेंगे along with others. Authors demand for rapid publication. मैंने आज सबमिट कर दिया, मुझे 1 हफ्ते में 2 हफ्ते में within a month मुझे रिजल्ट चाहिए कि मेरा पेपर पब्लिश हो जाए और मैं अपने यूनिवर्सिटी में सबमिट कर दूं. तो इस तरह के प्रेशर्स होते हैं जिसमें कि प्रॉब्लम रहता है. मतलब आपके अप्रेजल्स, KRAs will be dependent on this. So need to identify and appropriately tackle increased cases of misconduct. First is identification, second is tackling, because there is no centralized body, there is no governing body for each of them worldwide which would take care of these perspectives. So कुछ इंडिया में है, कुछ यूएस में है, कुछ अलग कंट्रीज में है, कुछ इंडिविजुअल्स काम कर रहे हैं, जैसे कि ऐसे पता लगता है. So new industry developments to keep pace with peer review, open access. मतलब इतने जो डेवलपमेंट होते हैं, इनोवेशंस होते हैं, दे शुड बी इंडिविजुअल्स दोस हु कैन रिव्यू देम. फॉर एग्जांपल आज की डेट हम मेटावर्स के बारे में बात करते हैं, एंड वेरियस other scenarios which comes into in order to understand what that technology is and to review them to give appropriate comments or as part of the peer review process. So before I go through tips, any questions from anyone? Let me quickly check the chat. Okay, there is one question from Madhavi. Sir, why UGC not take any action on predatory journals? नहीं, ये बात नहीं है कि UGC action नहीं लेता है. मैं आपको दिखाता हूँ UGC का वेबसाइट भी, जिनमें इनके पास कैटेगराइजेशन है फॉर द UGC केयर 1 केयर 2 लिस्ट. उसमें पूरी इनके पास लिस्टिंग भी है अबाउट प्रेडेटरी जर्नल्स. मैं क्विकली आपको दिखाता हूँ वो चीज. लेकिन प्रॉब्लम यह है कि UGC को भी किसी ना किसी को कंप्लेंट करना चाहिए, जिसके बेसिस पे वो लोग एक्शन लेंगे, क्योंकि इट इज वर्ल्ड वाइड देयर आर सो मेनी डिसेप्टिव मेथड्स व्हिच पब्लिशर्स अडॉप्ट. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, आज उन्होंने एक वेबसाइट रखा, कल कुछ चेंज कर देते हैं अपना वेबसाइट या नाम चेंज कर दिया, लेकिन उनका बिजनेस एक्टिव है. तो इन ऑर्डर टू गेट अपडेटेड विद दिस सॉर्ट ऑफ इंफॉर्मेशन इज हाईली डिफिकल्ट, and this is not a phenomenon which exists in one place, one country, one state or one city. It is a worldwide phenomena. They use multiple approaches. जो जैसे आपको दिखाया मैंने कि पेमेंट इंडिया में एड्रेस होगा, पेमेंट कहीं और करना है, या बाहर का एड्रेस होगा, पेमेंट इंडियन रुपीस में करना है. तो they use multiple modus operandi in order to make sure that they are not being caught. So it is something like, as scholars, we should be able to, as soon as we identify them, we should raise a complaint so that action can be taken appropriately. That's what my view would be on these. Yeah. Any other questions? I guess no. Okay. No, somebody has asked, Arun Nehra, peer reviews mandatory? Of course, yes. Because it has to, your work has to be reviewed by those who are experts, typically experts in the field, and they will authenticate about the rigor and quality of work that you have done as part of your study. Whether it is qualitative research or a quantitative research, you should go through this peer review process, and that is what is done by typically all the journals. I won't go into details, but the review process, in which it's a double blind review, and the editors will select who the reviewers would be. So I can walk through with all the process in a different session altogether. So I'll focus on this predatory one. I think I have got few more minutes to complete mine. So what are the tips? Okay. Now, if you look into broadly the number of research for doing your research and submitting your research papers, how many such publishers exist? And these, what I put together is only those which are well known, like Taylor and Francis, Wiley, Emerald, Sage, Nature, Elsevier. So these are well-known publishers. आपको पता है कितने journals publish होते हैं, and what is the volume of research papers that are published worldwide with some of these key ones? Yeah. Any guess? Any quick question? Anybody can answer this? If you can just type in whatever comes to your mind on the chat. कि कितने publishers होंगे, कितने journals publish होते हैं, कितने research papers publish होते हैं साल में? Any guess from the participants? Nobody is typing. Okay, I'll give you a quick one. ये मैंने निकाला है as of the December last year from their individual websites. These are the indication of the number of journals which are published by these publishing houses. And if you look into overall volume, it comes to greater than 17 million articles which are published in these 12,000 plus journals. So as an individual, as a researcher, if I want to find a research paper for my study which are relevant, or to submit my research paper to a specific journals, it is a mammoth task. So we have to go through that kind of rigorous process in order to understand where should I submit, why should I submit in a particular journal and not the others? Do I comply with the norms? So it is huge. Now, moving on further. Next is about, remember I talked about ABDC category journals. They, as part of their qualifying criteria, the methodology that they use, they have got one of these clearly indicating that it must not be a predatory journal. So if a journal is a predatory journal, it will never come into ABDC category listing. So you can be very, very sure about this part. So when you're submitting your journal, your research paper, look for such qualifying criteria. That's number one. Second, this is the quality list. What I showed in the previous page, previous slide was 20. This was in 2018. Now I'm showing you the latest one. Their latest one was published on 15th of March 2023. It's a PDF file which you can easily download. You can look for that particular on their website. So I'll quickly show you into this. I've just highlighted some of them. So they say, as part of the approach they use, it's a removal of very low quality, including predatory journals. So you can be sure that your manuscript or your research will not be compromised if you submit into this ABDC category. And their journal qualifying would also be exclusion of likely predatory or overly aggressive journals. Okay, so some criteria is what they use for. And similarly, each panel chair will have access to a research assistant who will be tasked with the request pertaining to citation metrics and other relevant activities like searches for evidence of being predatory. So one of the criteria what they use in order to ensure that quality is not compromised and there are no predatory journals included as part of their quality listing. किसी ने यूजीसी के बारे में पूछा था, तो मैं यूजीसी का भी आपको दिखा देता हूं. तो यूजीसी में it's easy to go through their website. If you just do a ugccare.unipune.ac.in, you will get this one. You need to have a login in order to access various information. You can download the list and all. मैं अभी login नहीं कर रहा हूं, मैं सिर्फ आपको कुछ दिखा देता हूं. I will focus only on the predatory ones. So मतलब आपको जो download कर सकते हैं, you can search for other information like which are in category 1 or a group 1, group 2 care list. वो पूरा दिया हुआ है, UGC care list group 1 as well as group 2. Group 2 is the one journals which are indexed in globally recognized databases. For example, what we see is ABDC category or ABS listing. वो सब इसमें आ जाता है. So they're given all those listing as well. Yeah. Now हम जो focus कर रहे हैं, it is on predatory journals. So they've given an alert saying that list of cloned journals which are part of UGC care group 1. So हम जो इस group 1 की बात कर रहे हैं, उसमें कौन-कौन से cloned हैं, वो पूरी listing आ जाएगी आपके पास. So it will say what is a print journal and the cloned one. So इसका क्या मतलब हुआ? एक journal है जो सिर्फ only print है, जैसे ये है पंजाबी का और ये है इंग्लिश और हिंदी में. तो ये सिर्फ प्रिंट बेस है, देयर इज नो ऑनलाइन डिजिटल. लेकिन किसी ने क्या कर दिया, एक ऑनलाइन ले आए उसी के नाम और सिमिलर नाम से और उसको डिजिटल में मतलब ऑनलाइन में कर दिया विद अ वेबसाइट एंड ऑल. सो इट इज अ क्लोन जर्नल फॉर अ प्रिंट जर्नल. पूरी लिस्टिंग दिया है इन्होंने यूजीसी केयर लिस्टिंग में. दे गॉट सम 47 ऑफ दिस लिस्टेड लाइक दिस. देन द नेक्स्ट वन इज अबाउट इन द ग्रुप 2. Okay, group 2 mein, similarly, they said which ones are in the group 2, they list which is here, but and the ones which are cloned and the reason. So for example, इसमें language है Turkish, German and English, and this में सिर्फ English है, and they've given a website versus this. So it's cloned with something else. If you see ISSN number will also be similar. Publisher इसका कौन है और इसका कौन है publisher, but they have a website. Okay, and the title of the journal. So be very, very careful when you pick and choose. You should be able to collate from these multiple sources, क्योंकि एक ही जगह पे सारा information नहीं है. And since we are from multiple domains, multiple areas, we need to adopt multiple approaches in order to search for. There are 61 from here. तो पहले आपको Bayes list दिखाया. अभी आपको दिखा रहा हूं मैं यूजीसी केयर का. Okay. Next, this is what I've shown about group 1 and group 2. Then there are other ones on how do you recognize predatory journals using this indexing in JCR as well as the open access. So this is another place where you should look for. For example, up DOAJ mein, you can go and check for whether it's actually an open access in that particular directory or the database journal listing. So if you go in here, you can specify the journals, and if you know the field, specify a specific one, for example, title, ISNN or publisher. Uske hisab se aap journal ko likhkar you can search for that. So this is another which is a trusted. So aapko pata lag jayega whether ye open access journal hai ya nahi hai. So DOAJ stands for Directory of Open Access Journals. So you can identify whether a journal actually is qualified to be an open access or not based upon its listing in this journal. Okay, so that's another way to find out. The next is searching from the JCR master journal list. As I said, सारी links मैं आपको दे दूंगा, अपने website में डाल दूंगा. तो ये वाला है जो कि हम Web of Science भी कहते हैं इसको. So this is the from clarivate.com. So here with this master journal list, you can identify whether it's part of it or not. Okay, that's another place. Now this is another place where you can download them. You can also download this as a CSV file in doaj.org with a CSV. And this is as of what it is updated on 22nd of May. मतलब काफी recent है जो इनके updates रहते हैं. So if they claim that they are indexed in DOAJ, आपको इस link से पता लग जाएगा whether they are actually part of it or not. So I'll simply quickly go through this. तो ये देखिए, ये पूरा इन्होंने दिया हुआ. It's a simple CSV file. आप इसको download कर सकते हैं. They got something like more than 700 listed in this file. So you can make use of this as well to identify whether it's a genuine or whether it is not a genuine. फिर एक ये भी है think check submit में. इनके पास एक PDF भी है जो checklist है, which will help as a scholar to identify or quality criteria. आप इस लिंक में जाएंगे तो ये पूरा इन्होंने दिया हुआ है. What is the meaning of things? Or these are some of these guidelines what they have given. For example, how should you trust a particular journal? Whether your colleague knows about it, whether they have read any articles, is it easy to discover the latest paper from this journal? Is the name confusing, whether it is unique or not? So the multiple criteria have been given under each of these. So before you actually submit, you should be making use of this. Or इन्होंने PDF भी दिया हुआ checklist which can be easily downloadable by us and we can make use of it. तो अभी तक हम काफी कुछ Bailey's list के बारे में बात कर रहे थे. This is not the only list. There are other things as well that can be looked into. If you're from medicine field, medical sciences, so they have given other ones which you can make use of apart from these Bailey list for identifying which are predatory and which are not. So quite useful. Okay, I will share this link. And then they have also given something as a journal evaluation rubric. So you can make use of this to qualify the quality criteria of each of the journal, whether it is good, fair, or poor, based upon various criterions that has been listed out. Anything which has very low score is something that you should ignore. मतलब आपको उस particular journal में कभी publish नहीं करना चाहिए. So आप कुछ criteria ये सब लेकर आप assess कर सकते हैं whether it is a good journal or not. Then I think in the next 5 minutes, I should close. Sorry for hurrying it. I'm sure this one and a half hours is not less, giving the mammoth information that exists for. So how do you identify? I've given multiple information from the scope, metrics, indexing, editors, emails, the way that they would go through. There are some 19 such criteria that could be looked in for to identifying quality criteria. The another one is there are 25 different criteria which has been identified by Erickson in the year 2017 as part of the research paper, and you can make use of these as well. Okay, 25 different criteria to identify the quality of these journals and publications, followed by what are the best practices at multiple phases. For example, if they have transparency or not, and how do we find them? This is an excellent research article what they have provided. I won't go through all of them, but I'll share the link so that you can go through this. And this is what is the content I showed for the content of the journals, the practices which are being adopted, organization, as well as the business practices. For each of them, they've given multiple additional details which should be followed for identification accordingly. Okay. And then this is for the medical sciences. Now, as an individual, what should we take care of? How should we approach the career, as well as publishing in these journals? If there are such kind of strong temptation in following this easy route to publish, please do resist them. Avoid such kind of taking easy route. If publisher promises that paper will be published in 7 to 10 days, it's too fast. That means they have compromised on the quality as well as going through the process. When we look at our career, we should look for the next 1 decade, 2 decades, or 3 decades. And we should ensure that the longevity of our research is ensured. If it takes more time, spend more time, do good quality work and publish in a good quality journal. If you publish in low quality journal, it will hurt you, because over a period of time, it will not be recognized. And you as an individual will not be recognized within the scholarly academic group. Always do your best. Come up with your best whenever you're doing any research. So don't compromise onto those quality part. What makes a good choice as well as a naive choice? I've given various options. Again, I will share it on my website so that you all have access to this information. Though this session is being recorded, you will have information to all of this. Yeah. These are other links that I will provide so that you have a complete information on. Since you all are from multiple domains, you should be able to know where to find and how to find the information about the predatory journals. So my quick tip will be, do good quality work, have faith in the work that you do, and avoid submitting into such kind of predatory journals, and avoid getting into this trap. So with this, I will close my presentation. If there are any questions, feel free to ask before I pass it on to the organizers. Any questions, please? Okay, I'm getting a lot of comments on the chat saying that we learned so many things, and thank you messages as well. Yeah, I'm happy that somebody saying outstanding session, Dr. Mamta Rani. Okay, thank you so much. I'm so nice hearing such kind words. Very well explained, Anshika. Okay, thank you, Anshika. Yeah, somebody saying Bharti from English department, PhD. Thank you so much for the information. Aman, yeah, great. So please do make use of it. Though we have spent the last 1.5 hours, we have gone through multiple scenarios and multiple things. I know you are from various domains. The key thing is do good quality work and be recognized in this academic field. With that, let me pass it on to the organizers.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot, sir. Thanks a lot. Thank you, sir, for such a nice presentation. On the behalf of Baba Masnath University, I sincerely thank to the keynote speaker, Dr. Raja Sankaran, for taking time from your busy schedule and gracing this session with your warm presence. It's a great honor for us to have welcomed such prominent speaker, known for their contribution to their respective research fields. I am definitely sure, sir, we will greatly benefit from your opinions and findings. Last but not the least, I want to extend a vote of thanks to our organizing team, admin staff, and faculty members. Thanks to all the participants for making this session successful. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much,
Now,
Dr. Jyoti, and to all the participants for joining in and for giving me this opportunity to share the knowledge. I'm sure everybody would benefit out of it. My job is done if everybody uses this, some of the practices and to follow these best practices. With that, namaskar to all.
thank you, sir. Thank you. Now, the next session will be resumed at 2 p.m. See you soon. Take care.
Bye, everyone.
Sir. Bye.